All right. Welcome, everyone. We are thrilled to have you join us for today's webinar on revolutionizing returns with Continuum and P21. If you are a P21 user looking to enhance your returns process, you're in the right place, and we're happy to have you. My name's Matt Johnson. I'm the Vice President of Marketing here at Continuum. Over the past 18-ish years, I've had the privilege of helping distributors and manufacturers navigate the complexities of digital transformation, specializing in B2B e-commerce and technology adoption. Now, earlier in my career, I was focused on moving products efficiently down the supply chain to create the best purchasing experience. But today, my passion lies in helping distributors and manufacturers tackle the unique challenges of reverse logistics, everything that moves back up the supply chain. Returns, warranties, and repairs can be a challenge to manage at scale, especially with the limitations of ERP systems like Epicor's P21. And that's exactly what we're here to talk about today: how to deliver a superior customer experience, streamline the life cycle of customer returns, and ultimately boost profitability. So before we dive in, we're going to do a couple of introductions. I'd like to introduce you to my colleagues who will be your hosts and guides for today's session. They'll be walking you through our demo and sharing some valuable insights along the way. By the way, I'll be managing the chat function in this webinar. So if you have any questions or you just want to share some thoughts, I'll do my best to respond in real time. So with that said, I'm going to turn it over to my team for their introductions. And I just want to say again, thank you for being here.
Awesome. All right, everybody, I'll go ahead and get us kicked off. My name is Alex Witzpollock. I'm the founder and CEO of Continuum. Looks like we have quite a few folks jumping in. I'm super thrilled. I have a soft spot in my heart for P21 users for one reason or another. I've spent 13 years in the distribution and manufacturing space, always on the technology side. But this concept of returns, warranties, repairs, anything moving back up the supply chain has always been a challenge. So I'm super excited to go deep into this problem today, talk to all of you about how Continuum is helping solving that with my team here, who I think we have a great team and a lot of experience helping solve these challenges. Rawan.
Awesome, everyone. So my name is Rawan and I lead the sales engineering and delivery team here at Continuum. You'll probably have seen me automating one process or the other for distributors and manufacturers for most of my career, whether it's order automation, AP, AR, you name it. I am so excited to be demoing to you Continuum today, only because that is one process that I've seen day in and day out that most distributors and manufacturers find the most grueling. So really excited for today. Keep the questions coming. Just let us know and we'll be more than happy to answer any questions you may have. Combined, all of us have great knowledge and expertise, not only with our product for obvious reasons, but definitely with P21 as well. I'm going to hand it off for Malcolm to introduce himself.
Hi, everyone. Malcolm Moran, CTO of Continuum. Similar to Alex and Rawan, I have deep expertise in this space: distribution, supply chain processes, ERP systems. I spent the majority of my career building software in this space, and I have over 8 years of experience specifically building integrations into P21. You can probably ask me any question about any of the P21 APIs, and I could answer off the back of my hand. So really excited to go through this with you.
Awesome. Well, let's hop in. So as far as today, we have an action-packed next 60 minutes. We're going to move quickly through it. There's a lot of content to cover. The first piece that we're going to go through is really just level the playing field on what's changed out of customer expectations when it comes to returns. How is the consumer world spilling into B2B? And we'll kind of set the foundation. Then we'll actually take you into a couple stories on how P21 users, your peers in distribution, are utilizing Continuum and some of the challenges that they face that led them to say, hey, there's got to be a better way. And most exciting, the demonstration that we're going to take you through today, and how we can transform your returns process. And this part's really exciting, in 72 hours or less, right? So after we get through the demonstration, stick around, because at the end, we are releasing our new program. 72 HD stands for 72-hour deployments. Technology for distributors and manufacturers has historically been super challenging, right? Oh, you have to integrate to my unique business logic, my ERP. Have you done that before? And I've spent my career with integrating to technologies, right? It's like any software you need, it needs to live within your ecosystem. And it's one of the biggest challenges. Distribution is just hard. Your software shouldn't be. And that's the ethos and the principles that we built our technology on, is how can we get you up live, providing value for you and your customers extremely quickly. And returns, no one wants to deal with it. like you don't want to get a return. You certainly don't want to have to deal with standing up your return software. So how can we white glove that and make it quick, easy, and seamless for your entire organization? So stick around to the end. We'll go deep in how that process looks. So the reality is, when you look at returns, warranties, even repairs, likely it's a small percentage of your total transaction volume. 2%, 3% of your total transaction volume, right? Maybe it could be 5%, depends on the industry. Some in the HVAC industry, when you look at warranties, we've seen it as high as 15 to 30% of transaction volume, because the time frame in which a warranty can be claimed. But the reality is, the cost of order processing for a distributor is one, you'll calculate that in your own business. On average, the cost of processing a return is 8 to 10 times higher. And the reason for that, we're going to go deep into the reasons and why the cost is so high. But if you look at a distribution company, they've, for the most part, optimized how do you process an order? How do you ship that product? How do you get it to your customer, right? That is a very seamless, streamlined process. You want to reverse that and move it back up the supply chain, all bets are off. What we say is, it takes a village to process a return, right? And we, for the sake of this conversation, we classify returns and warranties as a very similar process. And the reason we can do that is because by its very nature, we only work with B2B distribution and manufacturing companies. And so when you look at the consumer world, they don't quite understand all of the nuances that you have as a distributor. Restocking fees by customer. Where does the product go by warehouse? How should we set that? How do tax implications relate to this return? Different reason codes. Multiple, we'll get into all the different business logic. But when we think about a return, we talk about a multi-party return. If you're on this call, you're likely a distribution company. You sit in one of the most difficult positions in the supply chain when having to deal with a return. You sit between the end user, who's typically a business, and your manufacturer, a business. So we always say you have a catch-22 decision to make when you're dealing with defective returns. Now, I'm not sure what percentage of your return volume or warranty volume would be defective by nature. But when you get caught in that catch-22 position, you have a decision to make. Do I credit my customer now and hold all of the risk needing to get credit from my manufacturer? Or do I tell my customer, no, Mr. Customer, please wait, let me get my credit from my manufacturer first? Either way, whether it's a stocking return, a defective return, this process of managing a return takes at minimum 3 departments, on average 4 departments, and up to 5 or 6 different departments to process a return. You have your customer service group to authorize it. If you have a fleet, you'll need to actually pick it up and manage the routing of that. Your warehouse needs to receive it in, and your finance needs to credit the account. If it's a defective, your purchasing team needs to go get the return PO to the manufacturer and make sure you get your credit back. This process, when you look at the labor involved in managing the process, we always say there has to be a cattle prodder in the business that's keeping the process moving along. And there's lack of visibility throughout the entirety of the process. And so when we look at returns for distributors, the challenge is there's so many downstream impacts they're insidious. They're hard to see. They're also very difficult to quantify. So oftentimes when we work with companies, some of the biggest champions of a returns management solution with Continuum is actually eliminating the customer challenges, not of just initiating it, but managing the visibility throughout the entire process. Oftentimes it leads to customer AR disputes. Oh, I'm a customer. I'm going to short pay this invoice because I have an open return on it. Or I'm not going to pay the invoice. Tell me where this return is at. So how can we deliver visibility throughout the entire organization on where does this return stand, what has happened, what needs to happen next, and how do we execute that without throwing bodies at the problem? And so making sure that we're delivering a fantastic customer experience is number one. And we'll get into some of the experiences that our customers have talked about because that's your number one focus. But how do we ensure while we're doing that, we're not taking on all of that pain of the labor that leads to AR invoice disputes, missed vendor credits if we're talking about a defective, and getting visibility through a streamlined end-to-end process that is automated with enough manual intervention where needed so you can manage all of your uniquenesses and complexities. And that's ultimately the journey that Continuum solves for distribution companies and do it quickly and seamlessly. The world has changed. The expectations of customers has changed. The B2C world, and this is what's very interesting, is even for our customers who e-commerce adoption is very low, single digits when you look at a transaction count percentage, customers still want to be able to process returns on a website. And I think there's something interesting there where it's, hey, the consumer world has conditioned me that I don't want to have to pick up the phone. I don't want to, I can if I need to, I can email in, but if I can process this return and get my authorization quickly while still managing your business logic, get my replacement order if needed, the expectation has changed from your customers. What we always say is when there's a return, you have a critical selling event. A customer has an issue. They received the wrong item. They just don't need it. They need to get it out of their inventory and a credit back, especially in today's economy. Or there's an expectation that something needs to happen quickly. And so I think we're seeing the consumer world changing customer expectations. On top of that, the e-commerce adoption, while it may not be as rapid as we see, is anyone has projected, e-commerce adoption is driving the customer expectations. All the while, the visibility with just-in-time inventory. Hey, what product is on its way back? So if you're a distributor on this call and you're saying, hey, we're really trying to get tight on the amount of inventory we're holding, your levels in stock are going down. What potential return requests do we have that we can draw from inventory across customers who've requested a return, but maybe we haven't yet received this in? Getting that visibility into the process is going to help you be able to manage in today's expectations. How customer expectations have changed, but so is the economic climate that we live in. So how do we actually execute without, again, throwing bodies at the problem? And so with Continuum, this is an automated platform. Your customers can self-serve. We'll get into the details on how that happens. You also have your team that can manage these returns and create returns with 2-3 clicks of a button without manually having to go into Profit 21, two-way integration to Profit 21. But the most important piece is providing visibility and a workflow from end to end so we don't ever lose visibility or lose track of where a return stands in the process. Ultimately, removing the manual labor that it takes to manage the end-to-end process, but more importantly, making sure that your customers are getting a great seamless experience throughout the entire process. So our technology is broken up into 4 different hubs. And so I'll take you through quickly what these hubs look like in the actual technology behind it before we hop into a demonstration. Today, we're going to be focusing on the customer service hub. If you think about generally like what that is the customer service hub can live on your website. Your customers don't even need a login. We can do SSO with your e-commerce platform. in all of your business logic for what's returnable, what's not returnable, how should restocking fees be applied, your customers self-initiate the return. We educate your customers on what's returnable, what's not returnable, and why, based off of time, based off of vendor, based off of reason codes, multiple different pieces of logic. And then we can auto-authorize this return to come back or push it into a workflow for approval. We're going to focus most of our time here on the customer hub because this is the first step to the end-to-end automation throughout your organization. We also provide a driver warehouse and receiving hub, which allows your team to receive these items in, whether you're using a WMS system or wireless warehouse with P21. If you have your own fleet, this is super important because oftentimes products show up at a driver and driver's like, I didn't even know I had a return today. And so how do we get visibility and tracking throughout this process so we're not losing returns? The actual inspection process in the warehouse, providing visibility and communication between customer service and the warehouse team, and being able to obviously receive these items in. The third hub is the vendor and finance hub. That's taking a customer return and turning that into a vendor return PO, vendor inventory return, more specifically for P21, and being able to tie the life cycle of where have we gotten credit versus given credit. So now we're really starting to be able to identify the delta in credits given versus gotten and identify real bottom line impact and challenges to eliminate missed vendor credits and make sure the books are balanced. And then the fourth hub, which it likely requires more discussion based off of your vendors, but integrating to your manufacturer's warranty portal so that we can actually identify replacement parts, be able to initiate the warranty claim and process it from end to end, which is really inclusive of the three hubs all together. So for the sake of time, I want to jump into just a couple of scenarios, real life scenarios of other P21 users and how they're actually leveraging the system, challenges they faced, and what the future state with Continuum looks like. If any of you on the call are familiar with a company called Radians, they're a P21 PPE manufacturer and distributor. And what's interesting about Radians is the number one driver and the team that was the biggest champion and proponent of Continuum during the evaluation process was their finance team. Customers would call and say, hey, I'm not paying this invoice because of this reason. I have an open return. I thought I should have gotten credit. Or I'm going to short pay. The finance team didn't know who to go to. Do I call my CSR group? Do I check with the warehouse? Was it with a driver? Did it get lost in transit? The lack of visibility into a return created downstream impacts on the bottom line, let alone the manual labor it took to actually manage and communicate to identify where these things were at. There was bottom line impacts inside of their business. Another company, Tropic Supply, this is more focused on warranties, but they actually had customers saying, hey, it's challenging for us to process warranties with you. It's difficult to get a replacement part. I don't get my credits back in time on this replacement part. And candidly, I find out that you haven't even submitted the warranty claim to the manufacturer yet on my behalf. The time lag that it takes is challenging for me. The way that you have to solve it is by throwing bodies at the problem unless you have an automated system. And the last one, an example of another P21 user, Banner Solutions. And I specifically recall Ben Smith, the chief digital officer, saying, look, we work so hard to make this process easy for our customers. We fight tooth and nail. Our customers wince a little bit when there's a return, but we wince a whole lot more. And so what they had to do is actually, they had to invest more human resources to make sure they delivered a great customer experience. And so what we're here today to show you is how you can get started very quickly to solve the end-to-end returns process from initiation through crediting, receiving vendor credits, and we can do that in an extremely quick, rapid time to value, which I think is the most exciting part. So I'm excited to jump into the demonstration. This is the part that I think everyone's been waiting for. Make sure you stick around to the end, because after the demonstration, we're going to talk about 72 HD, how we can jump straight into 72-hour deployments for you and your team with very limited human capital invested.
Awesome. Thank you, Alex. So this portion of our webinar, as Alex mentioned, is going to go deeper on our product. We're focusing today on the customer hub, but please feel free to let us know any questions. And then as we also go through this, I am positive you are going to have questions about your own business, your own process. What about this scenario? What about that scenario? And we'd love to actually sit down with you and design solutions. That's what my team is really good at. Design solutions that benefit you and your business. So as I go through here, for the most part, it is going to be general, but we'd love to spend some time with you after the fact just to design solutions for you. So that being said, right now I am sharing the customer portal. So a lot of you are probably thinking, okay, this is another portal that my customers are now going to have to use. Contrary to that thought, we're actually going to be living on your website or your e-commerce site. It could also be in the signature of your email. So what we're doing is think of a returns button where if your customers are already signed in to, let's say, your e-commerce site, they could easily now go into this portal to now initiate returns or warranty claims with you. We're going to be using single sign-on for that. Alternatively, your customers can also access the quick return. Think of this as the guest checkout feature in, your B2C space. So they could come here and they could key in an invoice number or an order number, and they could immediately start by creating a quick return without logging into any of the systems. Once they click in and select an order number, we're going to ask them for their contact details. Now, the reason this is important is because we want to be able to send automatic email notifications to them at any point when this RMA or this warranty claim gets approved, denied. We want more customer information. We're going to get automatic email notifications on these as customers. The benefit of that, your CSR does not have to go and create manual emails letting your customer know anything about this return. Here we're going to have everything listed out that was on that original order. Now, what you're going to notice here is we have items that are highlighted as red. So think of this as every time your customer submitted a return or called you up and said, hey, I want to return this item. And you're like, Susan, I told you already, you can't return this item. This is a custom order. So what do we do with that? We're using this as an opportunity to educate your customers on your return and warranty policies. We're going to automatically add business rules and logic so that your customers are guided through the create return process. So if we're highlighting these out, we're letting your customer know, hey, these items are actually not eligible for return. Now, we have different ways of doing this. We could highlight it in red and say, sorry, you can't actually return this. Alternatively, we could highlight it in red and still allow them to return it in the basket with a pop-up that says, hey, just letting you know this has a high chance of getting denied. Another way that this looks good is we have the ability to also show what we call assemblies, bill of materials. So this is going to be familiar to those of you who sell, let's talk about an AC unit. Instead of your customers having to send back an entire AC unit when it's all functioning and well except the motor, we're now allowing them to select a child SKU of that entire AC unit to say, hey, I either want to repair it or I want a replacement order on that motor. So like I mentioned, there's a lot of different business rules and logic that we can tackle here. And for the purposes of this demo, because I know I have a time crunch to go through here, I'm going to walk you through some of these. But like I said, you are going to have your own unique business rules and logic that we would love to tackle after this webinar. So for this, I'm going to go ahead and select these two items here. So what's great here is that your customers can actually select multiple items on the order to create a single return. And when they do so,
I'll call out just one thing if you notice, which is unique. Those two line items fall across two different invoices, which Rawan is going to probably touch on later. But in the real world, your team manually keying this today, they would have to, when they create this RMA, they have to add each line, go find the invoices which these line items relate to, and link those. So we can handle all of these unique complexities, which again, I know Rawan will go deeper into where in a single transaction, customer self-served, and we can handle this, and we'll get into the details of how we handle some of these unique things when we step into Profit 21 and show you the final transaction.
Great. Thank you, Alex. The other thing we're going to show here is your customer now has the ability to come in here and say, yep, I want to let you know that this is my PO number. And please, when you credit me on these items, I want you to reference this. So we're allowing your customers here to input all the information that they need so your CSR doesn't have to. Now, along with both of those being on two different invoices, which Continuum will solve for that, we're also going to allow your customers to select different reason codes per line item. Now today, if you're all familiar with P21, the reason code lives on the header level. So if you go ahead and create an RMA in P21 with multiple lines, you have to make sure that all those lines are due to the same reason for return. Alternatively, your team is going to have to go and create multiple different returns in your ERP system so you can actually manage and track the reason behind those returns.
Yeah, we see there's a big loss in visibility here, right? Because if you get a 4-line return, your team's probably not going to go create 4 different RMAs. They're going to just say, whatever, I'll choose the reason code that most adheres to all 4 of these lines. And so now you've just summed up all 4 of those lines to a stock return or a customer choice return. So you lose a lot of visibility into the actual the root cause of what's going on with these returns when your team is having to do that.
Yeah. And one of the great things here is what I'm showing on my screen is just a sample of these different reason codes, and I'll show you in more detail as we talk about the second line item here. But look at any dynamic field, whether it's a drop down, a text field, what's mandatory, what's not, these pop-ups where you're telling your customer, hey, by the way, because this is a customer choice return, just an FYI, we're charging a 15% restocking fee. You get to configure all these different ways. Remember that education piece that I talked to you about? We're walking your customer through the entire process of the creation of the RMA so that they're aware of everything that's happening. Now, you can tell me, hey, we don't necessarily want to tell them that there's a 15% restocking fee if it's a customer choice return because they might just not choose it. Great, let's remove the pop-up. So really, the world is your oyster when it comes to these reason codes. You could add problem details, you could upload attachments and make either one mandatory depending on these choices. So here you get really whatever you want. And let's say now instead of a customer choice return, I'm going to go ahead and say this is a pricing error. And as you can see, it keeps going depending on what information you need from your customer. So here I'm going to say, you know what, you guys did not apply the promo, and I'm talking about fall 2024. That's the promo code that you guys should have really applied here. Now, why am I choosing 2 different reason codes? Because it's going to be very easy for your customers to select whatever they want, and we're going to handle everything in the background, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that. But essentially here, the last step is they get to review their return and they get to agree to your terms and conditions. So once they approve that, they could go ahead and submit the return. And now we're telling them, hey, the RMA creation is in progress. What are we doing here in the background? We're actually splitting the RMA as we see fit based on your business rules and logic. Now, in this case, because our demo environment is integrated to P21, P21 allows reason codes on the header level. That is one RMA that had 2 lines with 2 different reason codes. We're actually splitting it into 2 different RMAs for you. Your customer didn't need to do it. Your CSR didn't need to do it. We're doing everything in the back end. Back to that invoices comment that Alex made, because those 2 lines were belonging to 2 different invoices, we already linked the invoices for those 2 lines. Again, customer didn't need to do anything. CSR didn't need to do anything. The best part here, email notifications go out to both customers and to both the customer and the CSR, letting them know that this RMA has now been created. Please review. Now, as a customer, the only reason I'd want to now sign in or log in is to see that return that I just created. So what works here now is now I could see those 2 returns. I could see that they're both under review, and I could select and see any RMA details as well. So I could go ahead, see any information, add notes, upload pictures, whatever it may be. But really, the point here is we're not just allowing your customers to be able to see to create RMAs, we're also giving them a portal to see the status of all these RMAs, what's been authorized, what's still under review, what's closed, so that we could, again, eliminate the number of times that your customers just calling in or emailing, hey, what's the status on this? What's the status on that? We're already doing that for them. If we go to create the RMA as well as a signed in user, we now have the ability to allow them to create not only against an invoice number or an order number, we could also have invoice history for them. So let's say show them a list of invoices for the last 5 years. If you want to initiate returns against any of these invoices, think of, let's say, an annual stock return as well. Those are options when it comes to invoice history. And lastly, but surely not least, is warranty claims. So we talked a little bit about warranties when it comes to your defective items. We can have a portal that supports both. If you just want returns, okay. If you just want warranties, okay. If you want them both together, we could support it. Now, the difference between warranty claims and returns, most of you already know this on the call, but we're now going to check if an item is under warranty or not. How do we do that? We have multiple ways of doing that. If you have warranty codes that already exist in P21, great, we could look up that. However, you're all probably really excited to hear that we could also integrate to your manufacturer supplier/vendors portal. So if you think of your biggest, largest vendor that you're having to create warranty claims with, if they have a portal that you have to log in to create warranty claims, we can now do that on your behalf. So not only are we now creating RMAs in your system, we're creating warranty claims in your manufacturer system. We're making sure everyone's talking to everyone. So they approve your warranty claim, we're updating it in Continuum for you, so you don't have to log in into multiple places all at once.
Yeah, it's big in the HVAC space. If we have any HVAC or plumbing companies on here, and being able to identify the available replacement parts to create the replacement order is a big one as well. So again, you have a customer out in the field who, has a critical selling event. They need a replacement item. I need it now. What's your availability by branch for the replacement parts? I need that now, and then kick off the warranty claim on the back end and track it through the credit back from the vendor. So that's a use case. It's a little more specific to maybe HVAC and plumbing companies, but it's a major win for those companies.
Beautiful. If you guys are not cheering right now on mute in silence, I'm assuming it's because you don't have a lot of defectives. But if you do, this is pretty legit. Okay, awesome. So that being said, that really concludes the customer portal portion of our customer hub. So now let's talk about the internal facing hub. So how are your internal CSRs going to manage these incoming returns? Now, like I said, they're going to be notified via email, letting them know, hey, you now have received an RMA that you can now review. So your team can see an RMA view, a header view. These are the two RMAs that just got created here. You can also see here that there's a line view. Now, the difference between a line view and a header view is that the line view is actually going to show you these icons. And I want you to remember them because I'm going to talk about them shortly, and they are important because these actually tell you what happened in your ERP system. So this is going to tell you, hey, by the way, we've linked the invoice in P21, but this hasn't been approved yet. The RMA was created in draft mode. Why is this important? Again, we're trying to make this a one-stop shop for your CSRs and for your internal team to not have to log into multiple systems. Anything that has to do with returns and warranties, they come into Continuum and they see everything they need. So let's go back to that RMA view. Now, these are two RMAs. I'm going to go ahead and edit them. So now I get to actually see the life cycle of this RMA. So before this webinar, I went ahead and added a line status here, called it a test line status, and selected, hey, when I select this, I want this to automatically approve the RMA in P21, and I want to actually receive it. Now, the reason why I wanted to show this is because when you actually get to use Continuum, you get a say in how you configure a lot of this. You get to decide what these statuses are, what they say, what they trigger in the ERP system. When do these light up? So the sequence of events. You get to decide, hey, every time we get to create a new return, can we automatically have the return location to our Memphis location? Alternatively, if we want to override this, we could come here and override it. That way, if I can come here and authorize for this customer to ship it back, they get an RMA acknowledgement letting them know, hey, please send it to our Memphis location, and we're going to go ahead and take care of it from there. We're going to inspect it and then let you know when we're going to offer you credits. Alex, I saw you go off mute there. If there's anything you want to add.
Well, I was just going to say for the return locations, that's all logic driven as well. And I'm sure you're going to get here, Rawan. But if you notice, we auto defaulted this warehouse. We can auto default warehouses off of the original order where it was sourced from. We can check if it's a stocking item in that warehouse still, because they may have purchased it 30 days ago and you no longer want to stock it there. Could be based off the source location. So there's complex logic that we can handle to make sure that you're getting the right stocking levels of these products coming back, which ultimately comes back when we talk about this just-in-time inventory. How do we actually right size our available inventory inside of our own warehouses?
Awesome. Thank you for tackling that. So one thing I also want to highlight here is you probably are going to say, hey, you know what? This is great for a specific type of return in our business, but does not apply to everything. Well, you're going to have the ability to have different types of returns, and each one can have its own different statuses, life cycle, sequence of events in P21. So if I switch this from a physical return to a non-physical return, meaning the customer is not necessarily going to ship this back to me, but they still need a credit because this is a pricing error. So they still want it. We just didn't really apply the fall 2024 code for them. If I drop this down, you can now see a completely different life cycle for a completely different return type. So really, again, everything here is going to be configurable. And like I mentioned, although this demo, I'm trying to go into details, but keeping it generic to apply to most of you on the call, I'd be really excited to see your own process to design a solution that best fits for you. So that being said, I know we have about 20 minutes to go for the webinar, and I really want to make sure that we get to the really exciting parts of it. So I'm going to pass it on to Malcolm to go ahead and just show us a little bit into what's happening in the back end with P21.
Let me quickly go off mute. All right, I'm going to go ahead and steal a screen share here and show you P21. So I'm logged into our sandbox environment here that Rawan was just creating content in. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right, move the participants out of the way. Perfect. So here, this screen you're seeing here should be familiar to everyone on this call. This is P21. This is the web interface that I'm sure most, if not all of you, have moved on to at this point. If not, no worries. Our integration works with any modern version. So as long as your version's in the last 5 to 7 years, you're probably fine. You can still integrate, even if you're on the old version. So right now, we're looking at the RMA screen. I've got 2 RMAs here, and these are both the RMAs that Rawan just created. So you created one return in our system in Continuum, but that actually turned into 2 RMAs in P21, using the rules that she detailed in terms of the splitting logic. So here's one of them, and here you can see it has one of the lines with a return quantity of 1. And if I go ahead and I can actually before I show you the linked invoice, I'll just point out a few of the key fields that are on this page. So you can see that we have the class 3 and the class 4. This is where in this environment, we've chosen to show the return types and the reason codes. But, for example, in your environment, if you don't use the class 3, class 4, class 1, class 2, or whatever, if you use a different field, we can access those fields via the P21 API. So you just need to let us know where are you putting your reason codes. And we can integrate there. So just in this case, we're showing you that we can load them into the class 3 and class 4. You can see that the customer PO number, the customer RMA reference number that was provided while Rawan was creating the RMA was loaded into the job field here, et cetera. It's letting you know that the Continuum integration was the one that submitted this RMA, and Rawan in this case was the contact that created the RMA. So I can go ahead and right-click this item. And if you're familiar with P21, you can go ahead and look at the linked invoice. So not only did we create the RMA, create the line items on the RMA, but we actually went ahead and linked the invoice to ensure that everything is tied together correctly in Profit 21. So here you can see that we have that linked invoice there, successfully linked. And then just really quickly, I can go ahead and swap over to my other tab, and you can see that this is the other RMA that we created when we did that splitting. This RMA has, in this case, two line items.
And we added that line for the restocking fee, that second line. So that we add that restocking fee based off of whatever logic on your restocking fees that you have. Again, based off of customer, based off of time frame. So 0 to 30 days might have a different restocking fee than 30 to 60 days. So all that restocking fee is auto calculated.
Yep. In this case, that was 15% for a customer choice return, the pop-up that we showed.
Yep.
All right. That was my portion, short and sweet. I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Alex.
Awesome. Awesome. So there is a lot more that we did not cover today. What you saw was the customer hub specifically. So how do customers initiate returns? Now you may have some questions. What if my customers don't initiate the return here? What if they call in? What if they email in? This becomes the source of truth for returns, because the challenge with returns is you never know the state. You don't really know the status that it's in. Did I tell my customer he could send it back and he never did? Did my driver forget to pick it up if you have your own fleet? Was he supposed to bring it in if it was a walk-in? Did we receive it, but did we not actually receive it in yet because it's sitting in a quarantine bin? That's one of the biggest challenges, finance. Did they actually apply the credit yet? So the important thing is, and what's I think really interesting, because Rawan, Malcolm, and I all worked at a different company, specifically in this industry prior to this. And one of the big challenges was like, wow, adoption, right? How do we get adoption? What we find is even companies, before they roll this out to their customers, they're saving 50% of the manual labor that it takes just in the CSR group alone. That doesn't include warehouse, finance. 50% of the manual labor associated with returns, just because they can click a return with a couple of clicks of a button, and all of the logic to split, assign restocking fees, put it to the right warehouse is automated and done. So that's one. So let's say you have a portion of customers who just will not go to a website to initiate a return. You may have some of those. You are still going to save a massive amount of time in the entry of these RMAs. That's important. More importantly is you now have digital exhaust on the entire returns lifecycle. Again, what we focused on today was the customer hub, which is just the initiation portion of how you initiate and authorize that return to come up. In P21, it's called the approved status. We find that misleading because you haven't actually approved it. You might receive it in and be like, this is defective. You said it was fine. It's not approved because you haven't gotten your credit. So up until that, what we didn't cover, and we'll go through in another webinar much deeper, is the driver and warehouse hub. So that's how you can actually scan these to make sure that your drivers, you have digital exhaust around once you've picked it up, and your drivers aren't like, I had no idea I had a return here today. What do I do with this? Making sure it's not getting lost, receiving in, inspection, and the entire process in the warehouse. What's interesting is oftentimes we meet with executives, and what they don't realize is the amount of broken communication between the customer service and the warehouse team. Oftentimes we find there's like a shared spreadsheet where the team has to be like, hey, they said this return was fine. This is actually defective. What do we do? So how do we get seamless communication, not only to the customer service group with the warehouse, but also back to your customer with tracking throughout the process? And obviously we'll have another webinar going deeper on the vendor and finance hub, which is how do you go get those vendor credits and associate and tie those to your customer credits, which ultimately has the bottom line impact. So let's dive into 72 HD. What you saw today is all included in the 72 HD program, 72-hour deployments. Let's start with the requirements for 72 HD. So one, the first requirement, and I saw there was some questions in the chat related to this. The first thing is you have to have the API for Profit 21. Could we integrate to Profit 21 if you don't have the API? We can. We cannot fall within the 72-hour deployment. We're going to have to be hosting data. It would take a process outside of this. We would suggest get the Profit 21 API if you don't have it. Most companies, in my experience, at this point, have the API. Malcolm can get deep into which APIs we're using, how we use them, when we use them. We use a variety of different APIs available to perform different actions. So that's requirement 1. Requirement 2, we need about 3 hours from your team. If you think about the 3 hours, the first hour is actually doing what we call a requirements gathering session. So that's how do we handle restocking fees? What's the logic around how we should actually bring these products back, like the warehouse locations we're bringing them back to? It's around, is there specific restocking fees by customer? It's around the timing of when we authorize it, when we send the RMA acknowledgement to your customer, those nuances, and the email configurations. What's updating emails to your customers so they're proactively getting information. That's required. That's the first hour. From there, we're going to go build your UAT. If everyone should have a sandbox Profit 21 environment. We request that you update your Profit 21 sandbox environment. We've seen experiences where we set everything up in UAT, your test, you have a test continuum, which speaks to your test Profit 21. And then we go live and you're like, oh, our reason codes are completely different in live, or our logic is different in live. A lot of times Avalara and the taxing won't work in sandbox. That's okay. That's typical. But like making sure that's fresh. In 24 hours, we release back to you a UAT environment. You test it. There will be some tweaks from there. And on that third day, we actually release to you your live environment, live to Profit 21. You can put this link right on your website and have customers start self-initiating returns, getting the manual labor off of your team. But still, I think this is important, right? Because people say, well, if it's automated, that means you're going to get more returns. No, we're going to be educating your customers on why things are not returnable, or, hey, we'll go ahead and let you request this return, but actually this was after 60 days. This is unlikely to be approved. We find that this is going to start to set a standard for your customers around what is returnable, what's not returnable, and actually get you better visibility around the root cause of why you're getting returns. May sound counterproductive, but we actually are in the game of how do we solve your returns problem and reduce the amount of returns that you have. This will reduce with the platform, not increase. Reduce all the while removing the amount of manual labor. So those are really the requirements, right? 3 hours of time from someone in your CSR group, someone to help us like set the rules of engagement and how we operate. And then the workflows for who approves, who can approve, who can set restocking fees, things like that in your business. Okay. Those are the requirements. Caveats. We are working on 6 different Profit 21 deployments through August 7th. So we are booked until August 7th. We are starting to take slots, 2 deployments a week starting October 7th. I may have said August there. I meant October. October 7th, we are starting to take 2 deployments a week. And so it's a first come, first serve model. Say you signed up tomorrow, you could be slotted in for October 7th, the 9th, or the 10th. And as those fill up, the slots get pushed out. We have an incentive if you sign up through September. So for the next 40-ish days, typically we have a services fee to integrate, build all of your business logic of $10,000. We've actually reduced that to $2,500. It's pretty incredible. For $2,500, you can get stood up on the platform. And more importantly, it's a pay-as-you-go model, meaning you're only paying based off the transaction volume that you're going to use. The intent here is, it goes back to the very first sentiment we had. Returns, yes, they're very difficult, but no one wants to deal with them. You have a laundry list of priorities and projects that you need to have done inside of your business. There's probably 30 different software projects you could bring on board. This should be the easiest one. Check it off your list. Deliver a great customer experience for both your customers, and major win internally for your organization. Pay-as-you-go model, one-time service fee of $2,500. This is available through September. So for the next 40 days, if you slot your project date, again, if you sign up towards the end of September, we're probably going to be pushed out until November-ish timeline, just kind of an estimate. But what's going to happen after this? So kind of takeaways here. Rawan and I are actually going to be out in Chicago at the Profit 21 Worldwide User Group. We've been trying since September. We've shaken trees as hard as we can. We can't get a booth. We've been trying. Next year, I promise we'll have a booth. So it's going to be Rawan and I. We have a pack full of meetings. We have a couple different dinners set up. But we would love to meet with you out at Profit 21 Worldwide User Group. Look us up on LinkedIn. Matt is also going to be sending an email after this. In that email, there's going to be a link to schedule some time with some folks on our team. During that call, you may have questions. Hey, how can you handle this unique scenario that we have? Here's an example. Oh, we don't want to show our customers freight, right? So they can't even request return on freight. That's just a cost we add. Perfect. We can explain to you how we handle all those unique little what about this scenarios. Schedule some time with us. We'd be happy to take you through a demo, maybe a little bit slower, going more methodical, or talk through your business logic or any of the other hubs that we offer through the platform as well. So again, Rawan and I are going to be at Profit 21 Worldwide User Group. We would love to meet with you. We could talk to you about some of the challenges that you have in your business, talk to you about other stakeholders in your business you want engaged. We love to meet with distribution companies. We're strange. And then two, Matt is going to be sending out a link where you can book some time and get in and start to book your slot for September. So, for October. I keep getting those dates wrong. October 7th, we can start looking at those slots. Super excited for what we have for the Profit 21 group and environment. If anyone has questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. I know will the system send return labels as well? Okay, Rawan, you want to take that one?
Oh yeah, I already answered, but the answer is yes. So those return labels or shipping labels can be added from within the portal, and those are going to get automatically triggered in an email notification to your customer only after you authorize its return. So if you upload it and don't do anything, great, we're going to leave it there until you're ready to let your customer know to ship it back to you.
Awesome. And then Sharon had a question around how much it is per transaction. So the pay-as-you-go model that we have, you can actually step into this and just at the entry tier. So for under $10,000 total package, includes your services, you could step into this. If you are doing more transactions, there is price breaks. The more transactions you do, the lower. So there's a minimum fee, but for the platform fee, and you get an allotment of transactions and you pay as you go from there. So we have customers that do 300 returns a year. We have customers that do 30,000 returns a year. The price per transaction, obviously, the more transactions you do, the lower the price per transaction, assuming you're committing to the volume. So let's see here. Any other questions? Feel free to pop them in the chat. I don't want to cut it short. We have 7 minutes left. Frequently asked questions. They say, people will ask, how many returns a year would it take for this to make sense? The way I look at that is, it really depends on, so if you could have 100 returns a year, but if they're all drop ship and they're all requiring vendor engagement, oh boy, you could have more of a challenge than someone that does 1,000 returns a year that are all stocking, right? Because the very nature of the complexity of those returns, and the number of departments, purchasing teams, warehouse, that all have to be coordinated. So it's more about like the makeup of your actual transaction volume, and what that looks like, as far as defectives, drop ships, things like that. Finance team, will there be a presentation showing how the platform works for the finance team to get credits back? Yes. So we have, that's the vendor and finance hub. That's a major pain point, right? That's what we call the cattle prodding. I need to go back and chase my vendor to get my credit back and tie that out to my customer credit and identify the delta. Where have we given credit versus gotten credit? So, Leo, feel free to reach out. We can schedule some one-on-one time with you, or the next demo, the webinar for Profit 21 users will have is specifically around the warehouse and driver hub. And then the third phase of that, we'll actually be showing the vendor and finance. If you want to see that quicker, Leo, give us a call, reach out to us. We'd be happy to meet with you and go deeper on that one. Cheers. I love it. Leo, if you're going to be at Profit 21, we can cheers in real life. So, Rawan, anything else we should cover here before we hop off?
No, I think we covered it. I'm really excited for what we have in store for everyone on the call. So please reach out.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Looking forward to meeting with you.
Bye, everyone.